Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered, the podcast that takes the mystery out of commercial real estate and makes it accessible for everyone. I'm Caleb David, a broker, investor, and community builder with over a decade of experience helping businesses and individuals bring their visions to life. Here we break down the market, share expert insights, and talk about the opportunities that commercial real estate creates for businesses and communities alike. No fluff, no gatekeeping, just real, unfiltered conversations that empower you to navigate the space with confidence. So whether you're an investor, a business owner, or simply curious about commercial real estate, welcome. Let's dive in. Welcome everybody to Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered. I am thrilled to have our guest on today, Yolanda Ortiz. She is an incredible business coach, and she is actually my business coach. And we have become friends through that process. And she has really helped me scale my business, my branding. And, she is familiar with the everyday trials and tribulations, successes and failures of small businesses, having been a small business owner herself in the wellness and beauty industry. And she transitioned into coaching. And it has been such a huge privilege to get to know her and get to see how she affects so many lives. So Yolanda, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad to have you.
Caleb, thank you so much. It is an honor to be here on your podcast. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, you and I always go off script. We kind of just feel things out. We've got some questions and things like that, but I'd love to hear a little bit for our listeners to hear a little bit more about your story of how you were in the health and wellness industry and then have transitioned into coaching. But not only that, you've become a building owner, you've been a landlord, you've got these experiences that some small businesses maybe haven't had the opportunity to. And so I'd love to dive into some of that, about maybe starting off with a little bit about how you got into the wellness industry and how you made the transition.
Yeah, well, lots to unpack here. I started out in the wellness industry over 25 years ago and ended up from booth renting to owning my own spa and really learning the business pitfalls on my own. All entrepreneurs know that the school of hard knocks teaches you those lessons that we don't forget.
Yeah.
But as that happened through the years and gaining the knowledge, the business acumen to create a successful business, I ended up getting diagnosed with arthritis in my hands and thought that it was originally carpal tunnel. So thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to go get surgery, back on track, but that's really not what happened. And the surgeon basically said, for your long-term lifestyle, you're going to have to do something else.
So it's kind of a forced change.
Yes, it was not something I jumped into and said, let's do this. So I started researching things, and after being in the beauty industry for over 20 years and knowing how to run a successful business, I thought, that's my customer. I am going to coach health, wellness, beauty industry people. And what I realized as I branched into that is that there were so many businesses out there that needed the same type of help. And so I ended up realizing that that was not just my niche. And I've been a coach for international markets, emerging markets, foundational coach for eMyth, brand coaching. So I've really coached anything from taco trucks to large manufacturing companies.
So as you're discovering all of this and there's that need, I know that I was very hesitant to hire a coach, not because, and maybe some of it was pride, maybe some of it was like, let's just white knuckle it and let's get through it. But, as the African proverb says, it says, if you want to go fast, walk alone. If you want to go far, walk together. And I learned that I needed that support. I didn't think I could afford it. but what I'm realizing is I couldn't not afford it. It was super important. And the reason why you and I are sitting here today is because we decided, okay, let's do this together. So if somebody is looking for, somebody has some hesitancy about hiring a coach, what are some things that you would offer to kind of help them understand, what the benefits are?
Well, I believe that a lot of people have a misconception on business coaching, that it's either for only for beginning businesses or businesses that are struggling.
Yeah.
And so the reality is that coaching is just as valuable or maybe more valuable for high performers or people who want to grow, refine their leadership. And maybe they're trying to navigate through tough transitions.
Yeah.
Um, so reframing your mindset on what coaching is. And ultimately, it's really not about fixing weaknesses,
Mm.
but it's about unlocking your potential.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, just removing those barriers that as entrepreneurs or leaders we happen to put in front of ourselves subconsciously.
Yes. Yeah, I can definitely tell you that I can say that you've pushed me to see some of the things that I maybe sensed but didn't know how to identify and rectify. So what are some of the biggest blind spots that you have found that business owners and business leaders face?
I think one of the main problems I see is that delegation.
Mm,
A lot of entrepreneurs who have put their blood, sweat, and tears into this business, and then they're going to entrust their team to take over things. It's hard to let go of that control.
yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that we worked on together, I know we wanted to talk about today, is the importance of values and why is values that starting point in coaching that kind of helps drive the ship.
So, Caleb, as you know, I believe values is one of the number one things you can work on. And as you said, it's one of the very first things that we conquer. And a lot of times people don't take the time to drill down on their values. But when you do, and I kind of have a fun out of the box way of getting you there, and you realize that this is really who I am and what I stand for in the essence of myself, then you can infuse that into your business. And it makes it easier to make those decisions that come about, those opportunities for your business, where you say, gosh, I don't know, is that a good idea? Well, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Does it align with your values?
Yeah. Yeah. And what would you say to somebody who wants to kind of explore those values, but they're also afraid of losing business or, maybe just that fear of letting go of control and having to, because values don't necessarily make things easier. It makes the decision process easier. But then what you have to do sometimes when you own those values can be very difficult situations. It can lead to someone being let go. It could mean, there's a client that you need to let go. Even though you've relied so much on it, there's that inner battle that we face of like, if I let this go, then what happens? So, what do you find happens when people make that commitment to their values and then start walking it out?
Mm. When you learn to trust yourself,
Mm,
who you are, what you stand for, what you believe in, what your business represents, it is hard. It's hard to turn down that client that, gosh, and we've all had that, right? Where you're like, oh my gosh. And yeah, there are some you take because face it, it's business. And
yeah,
sometimes you have to take that client. But when you stand up and say, no, I'm sorry. I can't help you. I'm probably not the right person for you. what that does is that shows that person respect for who they are, but more importantly, for who you are.
Yes. Yeah, and you've walked me through a lot of things over the last 8 to 10 years. Personally, business wise, launching the new company, hiring, coaching. Um, so I mean, you've seen all the different iterations, and I see the value in the support you've provided. And I guess I just want to put out there into the world that if you guys are thinking about coaching, reach out to Yolanda. And you've got lots of certifications. I've got like one coaching certification, but you've put the work in. And I know that you not only can coach business, but you can also do the life coaching, which I know is such a weird buzz. It's a buzzword and people just frown on it. But there are really important needs for support. So, what would you say some additional supports that people need beyond coaching? What are some of those things in people's lives that would really be the other, legs on the stool, so to speak, that you think would be important for people to incorporate into their life?
Coaching is definitely one, but personal growth and development for yourself, personal awareness, that could mean journaling. That's something you can do on your own. Taking a moment to find that hobby, that outlet for your stress that fulfills who you are as a person. Whether it be hiking or creating. Like I love to draw and I love to create pottery, so whatever that is for you, I think taking the time to fulfill yourself as a person, that speaks volumes to how you are successful as a business owner.
Yeah. And something that you said that I've really had to learn is you said you've got to trust yourself. And in order to trust yourself, you have to know yourself. So, what are some of the tools or tips that you can provide to our listeners on, like, what are some initial steps that they can get to start moving towards trusting themselves more?
Well, I think a lot of times it's about learning, taking the time. When we think we fail, let's say you have an interaction with one of your staff and it didn't go quite the way you should have. Maybe you didn't do exactly what you needed to. Taking the time to look at that and examine it and reflect and say, hey, how could I have done that better? And what this is probably more importantly, what wasn't fulfilled for me that I needed to react, not respond in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you implement? Okay, so we've established we've got to find these values, and do we keep the same values all the time? Is that ongoing? How often should we revisit those values?
So your values are always changing. As you change, as life ebbs and flows, your values can ebb and flow. Sometimes you'll have a value that is, with you no matter what. Like one of my personal values is music. And Caleb, you asked about implementation. If you meet me in person for your session, or if you're online, I will intuitively pick a song and have you take a moment and listen. That's how I implement a value that's important to me.
Yeah. And so someone gives you a call, reaches out to you, and they're like, I'm curious about the coaching journey. What does that look like? What are some of the initial conversations that you have with people before they start on their journey?
Well, number one, we have a conversation. It's just a free consult. It really is a conversation. We talk about things that maybe you want to work on or are having issues with. We talk about what I can do to help you. Um, and more importantly, are we a good fit?
Yeah. yeah, do those values align, right? And
Yes.
very much, I think that's super important in finding a coach, is making sure that they understand where you're coming from, where you're trying to go, and has the tools in their toolbox to get you where you need to go. And I know one of the huge things that you've been super helpful with is, when I started the company, is establishing new systems, thinking outside the box, not just doing things this particular way because that's the way we've done it. How important are systems for a small business?
Oh my gosh. Systems, process, you know me, I am like the systems queen. It is super important. And one great tip I can give you, if you are a new business and you're trying to figure out how to create a system, it's really about looking at what frustrates you right now. And that is normally a lack of system.
Yeah.
So if let's say, gosh, we can't get this product out on time.
Yeah.
Okay, what's missing in your system?
Yeah.
And I have a whole process on how you create a system so that next time it's more flawless. And systems aren't forever. Like, you don't all of a sudden create this system and it's there for the next 20 years. They also change and ebb and flow. And they may work for a while and then you may have to tweak it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what are some side effects or negative effects of not having the right systems in place?
Chaos.
That's fair.
Chaos.
And I think you also mentioned frustration, and
Yes.
I'm a small company, but the larger you get, the more important I believe that systems are important across the board. But I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like the lack of proper systems and communication can really bring negativity and lack of productivity into the workplace.
Absolutely. And so I had a client who he came to me, he was having a problem with a particular employee, and other employees were complaining about this person. So as we got to talking about it in our session, come to find out, this employee actually was never really trained on the process that he was failing. He didn't know.
Yeah.
So if you don't create the process, which in turn will help train future employees to do it the way you do it, this is how we do it here, right? Um, then the fault is yours,
Yeah.
not the person that you're blaming. It's lack of system, not the person.
Yes, I think as a leader, it's so important for us to take accountability for a lot of the things that do go wrong. So, if you're talking to a leader who's, is having these types of issues, how do you gently tell them you're the problem?
Well, Caleb, I'm not very gentle when it comes to that.
That's fair.
I
Sometimes you need straightforward truth.
Yeah, I think sometimes hearing the hard things, like the hard truths, we need to hear it. And my job is to give you that. You're trusting me with your business, with your personal life, with your emotions. So it's my job and my responsibility to be honest
Yeah.
and give you the hard facts.
Yeah, and I don't think that we can, as business owners, can really move forward much if we don't seek out that understanding and where the holes are. And we can't lead if we're not also being led. So
Mm.
talk about the importance of, you know, a great leader within an organization.
So I believe that everyone can be a leader. And when you are the CEO of a company, a lot of times we forget that leadership is not top down anymore. Leadership can be all encompassing. So I teach a leadership system that all employees can learn to be leaders. They can be a leader in front, leading their team. They can be a leader in back, helping support. They can be a leader beside, giving them that support side by side, working next to someone, or in the field, which is probably one of the most important things.
Yeah.
Being a leader in the field means you can read what's happening with the team. You know when morale isn't quite right. And when, as a leader, you can empower your team to adopt this system, it makes your leadership a piece of cake.
Yeah. So, and one thing I kind of hear you saying in between the lines, there's an importance of every employee of an organization to find a way to lead themselves. And what are some ways that you find when you're coaching a bigger team and you're dealing with morale and, all these different moving parts, you know, how do you help a leader identify which employees are in the right position, which are not, what are the strengths and weaknesses? What are some of the things that you could share with business owners out there of how to evaluate?
So, one of my favorite tools to use is the DISC.
Mhm.
And DISC, for people who don't know what the DISC assessment is, it really kind of breaks down personalities and people. And when you learn what your type of communication style is, um, a lot of people think, oh, great, now I know what I am. And so that's good. And they walk away and life is good. But it really isn't about you. It's about learning who you are and then learning how to communicate with the other communication styles. So, as a leader, I have worked with teams where we have gone through the assessments and realized that there are team members who actually are not in the right position. And when we move them over, it is a world of difference.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And I think it helps also leaders understand what motivates different people. Some people are motivated by money. That's not what I'm motivated by. Money is not one of my values. I like money. It's great. We need it. It's necessary. But having the freedom to run my own schedule and lead myself is works way better for me than saying, okay, you're going to be in at 8, you're going to sit at this desk, take a couple breaks and a lunch, and you clock out at 5. That doesn't work for me, but it does for a lot of people. And so, I want to transition a little bit more in talking about just the importance of vision for an organization and how important is clear vision, not just to employees, but also to clients.
So I believe vision can be a fun exercise to have, but it also creates an important roadmap for your business as a whole. So, what you can do, you can sit down, whether it's with yourself or you have a CEO, COO, take some time on a weekend, uninterrupted, look at a 1, 3, 5 year vision and plan your vision. This is your time to dream, to think big, to what does my business look like, feel like? It could even be smell like. What do my clients what's the demographic?
Yeah.
How are they going to be served? What is my revenue? What do I want my revenue to be in 3 years, in 5 years? What you're actually doing by creating this, and you're going to create it in the present tense, is when you're finished, you're actually going to go back through and you can pick out your action items and break them down quarter by quarter, year by year, so you can actually achieve your vision.
Yeah. And
And so,
one thing I'd like to throw in is apologize for interrupting, but
no,
it being in that type of situation, if you've never done this before, this is another reason why you need a coach to be there to moderate, someone who's objective, who's pointing you back to, okay, here's what's important. And we're going to make these decisions based on what is important, also known as our values. And to take those action steps, to me, that sounds overwhelming to do on my own, you know. And what would you just say to somebody who is like, well, I'm just going to go on into the office on a weekend and use the conference room to do this? Is that a good idea, or do you suggest being in a neutral environment that maybe could offer a little bit different perspective and feel?
I would absolutely say I want you to, I mean, if work provides you that peace and calming, then yes, your conference room is great. But I really want you to find a space that you're able to relax, no interruptions, no thoughts about, what I need to do 2 hours from now, and let go and create.
Yeah. And I think so many of us forget how important it is to create, which is a proactive thing. I think very often we are very reactive to what is happening to the business and to us. What are some ideas of how to step back and be like, all right, I've got to recalibrate? Obviously you've mentioned hiking or different things that bring people joy. But if you're in a setting where you're like, I'm getting really reactive, and you're in an office setting, what's the best thing to do?
Close your eyes, take a deep breath, feel your feet on the ground, feel your body in the chair, and just take a breath and recalibrate. Take a moment to remember that you are a human being having a human experience. Give yourself grace.
Yeah.
Take a beat.
Yeah. I think that's been really helpful. And there are lots of tools out there nowadays, the different apps that you can use, whether it be tapping or Headspace and Calm. I think there's ways that if we can't do it, if we can't self-regulate, the importance of finding that tool that works for us. And I think that's part of your personal development. That's part of you leading yourself back into your center. And I personally find that once we're centered and grounded, we make better decisions. And how important is personal development in a leader and employee's life?
It's huge. It, I mean, if you can center yourself, if you can find a way to be non-reactive, work becomes so stressful at times. And if you are just flying off the handle or making decisions off the cuff,
Yeah.
you're not probably going to make the best decision
Right.
for yourself or your business at that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know that you've got so much more to share and give, but I know one of the things that you also, being from the wellness background, is that you are a Reiki master. And
I am.
and how do how does that tool play into, how someone can change how they're feeling, how those energies change? I've had great experiences with it, but I feel like that's another tool that you can kind of speak to, and how practices like that can affect your success in your business.
Well, Reiki is energy work. And as you know, we all are made up of energy. And whether we have an injury, say your knee or your shoulder, or you are blocked because of stress or trauma that's happening, what Reiki does is it helps to redistribute the energy so that it's flowing in your body the way that it's supposed to. Is very calming, helps with pain relief, inflammation. It's definitely a very calming and peaceful um, modality for relaxation.
Yeah. And I think I hear you talking about energy, and I know some people find it woo woo, but
Absolutely.
until you experience it, it's hard to explain and help other people understand. But if you're feeling stuck, you need the help to get unstuck. And I think that's one practical way that people can feel a difference, and I think that's one thing we want to bring on this podcast is not just high level stuff. What are some tools that people can actually walk away from? And so what would you say to a business owner who just feels stuck? They're burnt out, and you know what's that first step to helping them get unstuck?
Well, so Caleb, as you know, I am an out of the box business coach. You may come to me for a session that you think is going to look a certain way. And at the end of the day, I may have you walking around my office from one area to the other, changing your perspective, right? So being stuck is a mindset. So learning how to be open. Mm-hmm. And Caleb, there's been times that as I am coaching you, I may stop you and say, hey, if you don't mind, I'd like to do a little Reiki on you today. Yeah. Or if you don't mind, let's talk about this, whatever underlying thing is there. So being stuck for one person is not the same for everybody. So everybody needs a little something different. So I would say be open to what's coming your way.
Yeah. And so one of the things I know a lot of people have gotten on the bandwagon of is affirmations, right? It's part of our morning routine. But I find sometimes that gets stale. Why do you think it's so easy for us to go from putting all this time and effort into these affirmations, and then in less than a month, you're just going through the motions? Like, what are some ways to keep it fresh?
Well, they don't fit any longer. Mm-hmm. So you change on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis. And so a question I love to ask when I begin a coaching session is, what would you like to create today? So instead of creating the same affirmation, and I love affirmations, I know they work, but sometimes when they're stale, it's about getting out of that space and saying, what do I want to create today?
Yeah, I think that really changes the perspective and approach to your day. It's no longer what is happening to me, it's what can I give back into the world? And how important do you feel like that purpose is to leaders, to have a bigger purpose other than money? How important is it for leaders and employees to have something that drives them other than money?
Oh, it's huge. I always recommend companies create days for volunteering, and employees can pick where they want to volunteer, what they want to do, versus forcing them, oh, today we're going to clean up a park. Well, maybe that doesn't work for them, right? Maybe they need something different. So purpose is huge. A lot of times we get caught up in work, like you say, and we have to make the money to pay the bills. But really, you go to work so that you can enjoy your family or enjoy taking those trips, doing those things. Work provides that currency to be able to live life.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we start transitioning out, start winding down, I would just love to hear some of your experiences as a business owner. Having been through that tradition, you've been a tenant, you've owned the building that you're in, you've leased it out. As when you were a small business, what do you wish someone had told you to prepare you for the commercial real estate side of things?
Explain triple nets.
There you go. What are they? What do they do?
And why are they there? Right?
Yes.
No, it's true. But I think understanding how you can be a good tenant. And the relationship between the owner and the tenant. I think something I've learned is that there is a relationship between the owner and the tenant.
Yes. And you know that very personally
Yes,
because you ended up marrying the guy.
I did. Who owned the business I rented? How does that work?
Right. So now you can do, now we're offering now dating tips. New way to meet a man, no, or a woman. So what, as a landlord, what have been some of the joys that you've experienced with it? And what are a couple of the things that were difficult that you had to deal with?
um, Definitely the biggest joy I get is watching the business expand and grow and become successful, because that's what I want for whoever rents from us, right? I want them to succeed, and that is a joy for me. Um, Difficulties, I think, just being open enough to navigate through maybe changes that they want to make,
Yeah.
and understanding how that works for their business and also how it works for the building that I
Yes.
own.
Yes, and you own a very historic building, so
Yes.
there are some things that you can and can't do, and being able to have that conversation, with the tenant and set proper expectations. And I love that you talk about the relationship because ultimately that's what it comes down to, and you want everybody that's in your building to succeed. Um, so as we kind of go through the wind down again, what do you think is one thing that leaders really struggle with? What's kind of that one of those top challenges?
Well, as I said earlier, delegating. Um, and I think taking time to work on their business,
Not in their business, but on their business.
on their business.
Yes, yes, 100%. Well, you give a lot of great advice, but today, what's some of the best advice that comes to your mind to give to our listeners?
All right. I think my best advice, if you're listening to this podcast today, is don't just listen, apply. Apply what you've heard. It's so easy to binge episodes and to, be on fire like, oh my gosh, that was such a great episode. But the shift really happens
Mm.
when you take the time and stop and ask yourself, okay, how does this help me personally or my business right now? And what's one small action from something you heard today? I mean, if you took that one small action, it could make a big shift in your business.
Yeah,
So, what's your takeaway from today?
yeah, that's really good. The act of listening and then taking that and putting it into practice. I love that. So, one question I try to ask most of my guests is obviously going to be about food because you know me.
Yes.
Let's say you are going out to eat, you've got a reservation for a table of four, you're in one of the chairs. Who's sitting in the other three chairs and why? And what are you also eating?
Mm. So, I think I would pick Richard Branson.
Hmm.
He would bring, the charisma to the table. He is amazing. The work he does helping entrepreneurs with their business. Um, and he's always looking at causing a positive impact in the world. So I think he would just have some amazing um, stories to share. Uh, RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, for all of her work with gender equality. I mean, what a force. I think she could bring some stimulating conversation. And then Selena Gomez, She's done a lot of work for herself, her own personal journey, to overcome and create mental health for herself and the charities that she works with, to help, as well as, she'd bring some levity because she's actually pretty comedic.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I love that answer. Well, what would that meal in front of you be?
I think when you are having a dinner party, family style, like good Italian food with a good glass of wine, sharing, bread and pasta. I think that's,
It's comfort.
yeah.
I love it. Well, Yolanda, can you let people know where they can find you? And if there's anything that you would like to share and promote, this is your opportunity, and we'll make sure all of this is in the podcast notes.
Well, you can find me on my Instagram, which is Corazon Business Coaching, and Corazon means heart in Spanish. So I'm working on the heart of your business, which is you. My website, which is the same, and I know this will be in the notes. And I would love to give a special offer to your listeners today. Obviously, you get a free consultation to see if we're a good fit. But when you purchase a package, I would like to give you 15% off.
Love it. Thank you so much. I know how much value you bring. So lowering the hurdles a little bit more to offer that is very generous of you. And I thank you so much. And I appreciate all of the wisdom and insight that you bring, not just to me, but to our community. Thanks again for joining us, and hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Caleb.
That's a wrap on this episode of Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered. I hope you found value in today's conversation and feel more confident about navigating the world of commercial real estate. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who could benefit from these insights. You can connect with me, Caleb David, and the team at David Commercial Real Estate. Just check the show notes for more information. Thanks for listening, and remember, creating space is more than just real estate. It's about building community. See you next time.